Last weekend, I put some of my own advice to the test for a portrait shoot. Since this month's photography theme is Maybe This Will Work, it seemed like a good time to make it a little bit experimental. I'll share my advice, my experiment, and the photos in this video. Then I will tell you how you can see more from the shoot. I get a lot of questions about purchasing new gear. A lot of people use the word upgrade. I want to upgrade my camera, and they want to know which one to get. But my first question is always, why? What about your current camera is it that you find lacking? And then they may say that they want better low light performance, or they just want a bigger sensor, maybe better image quality, but they don't necessarily have any specific complaints about their current body. It's more that they perceive that the newer camera will do so many more things so much better, and their photography will be immediately improved. Like, OMG, I am going to be able to take photos in the dark. But here's the thing. In those cases, the camera body isn't necessarily the first place to look to make a real difference in your photography. I mean, it's all going to depend on the body you have and the one you want and your goals, but something that does make a big difference every time in low light performance and image quality is lenses. So often I end up suggesting a good prime lens. It's a relatively inexpensive way to make a difference in your photos. And also to scratch that itch of getting something new. Because I mean, come on, we're all guilty of just wanting to purchase something new and maybe even making up excuses to justify a purchase. And beyond the gear, something we can do for free to improve our photography is to develop our style, our know-how with our gear, and how we approach photography. I like to talk about timing, light, and location. Those three things will trump fancy gear every day of the week. Look at any great photo in history. Was it the gear used that made the difference? Or was it the timing, the light, and the location? It's certainly not a simple question to answer, but I think we can all agree that it's some combination of those elements. So enough theory. What did I do last weekend? I did this portrait shoot with a couple of DSLRs. The Nikon D50, a DSLR that is more than a decade old, and the Canon Rebel T4i, which is about 5 years old. And I used prime lenses with both. The D50 got the 85mm f1.8, the T4i, the 24mm f2.8. And I did the shoot in the early summer in the forest at sunrise. Let's start with the gear. Why did I choose these combinations? Well, I used these because they are closer to what the majority of you all use. There are some of you certainly that have the latest and greatest, but far more of you have bodies that are years old. Plus, this month's theme is Maybe This Will Work. So of course I'm going to grab the older bodies and see how I can flex their muscles. As for these prime lenses, well, the Nikon 85mm is one of my favorites for portraits because it gives me super crisp photos. It's relatively inexpensive, and it's also a fairly compact and lightweight lens. And the Canon 24mm is a good focal length for wider shots, and it being a prime lens also has good clarity. It's also teeny tiny. Both of these lenses open up to wider apertures, the Nikon at f1.8 and the Canon at f2.8. So they're good in low light, and I can achieve a shallow depth of field. On to timing, light, and location. I wanted to be in the forest at sunrise and catch that time where the light filters through the trees and creates dramatic shadow and light on the forest floor, like stripes. I love that time, though it is a challenge to really capture the beauty of it. I knew this would be a good challenge for the D50 and the T4i. One of the big differences in DSLRs as time and technology has marched on is dynamic range. So my question was, how will these cameras do with this contrast of shadow and light? I was also curious to see how they would do just using natural light in the more shadowed areas. And of course, all of this keeping in mind that I'm just trying to take some beautiful portraits. As a second experiment, I wanted to see how I was going to be able to pull down any highlights or pull up any shadows in post-processing and see overall what I could do there. Overall, these cameras did well, but definitely had their limitations. The shadowed areas were no problem for either camera, but each did struggle in the more high contrast situations. The dynamic range of these two cameras just didn't want to allow both the bright brights and the dark darks to maintain detail. So I did my best as the model and as the person directing the shoot to position myself in the right areas, to angle myself towards or away from the light depending upon the shot. And then I played with the images in post-processing. In some of the situations where the brights were blown out, I ended up getting just creative with post-processing so that these aren't your classic portrait, and rather they were more dreamy and unconventional. So the bottom line for these portraits was the cameras both did great in the areas where the lighting was more forgiving. And they struggled in the more harsh lighting, and I had to get more creative with my shots in real time, but also in my editing after we were done. And I think that for the majority of the photo shoots that I have done in general, either of these setups would have been fine. There are, however, these tricky situations, like this one, where the newer DSLRs and their expanded dynamic range would excel, but with these older cameras, you just have to get a little bit creative. VIPs and Patreon, Zion, and Beyond patrons, you aren't done yet. I have a behind-the-scenes video from the shoot where I discuss non-gear related challenges and then also talk to you from my desk when I was editing. Plus, there is a whole gallery of images. Just follow the link in the description below to log in. Or for those of you that are interested in seeing that kind of stuff, you can follow that same link and learn more about supporting my mission. So thanks for watching. We are nearing the end of this month's Maybe This Will Work theme, and this was my last photo shoot of the month. I do have some other things in store for you this month, and lots of things already planned for June. So make sure you subscribe to my channel to see it all.